Angela is currently the Assistant Director for the City of Henderson Parks and Recreation Department. She was born in Northern California and started her career as a lifeguard in the Greater Vallejo Recreation District, where our own Anthony Ryans is from. During her career, she has worked for recreation facilities in California, Hawaii, Japan, and most recently in Nevada. She has her bachelor's degree in recreation from Sac State University, Stingers up, and is currently finishing her master's in science in recreation administration, right? Since 2008, Angela has served as the Pacific Southwest Region Rep on the Board of Directors for the National Aquatic Branch, a branch of NRPA, is currently the Vice President for the Southern Nevada Child Drowning Prevention Coalition, and has also been the Vice President for NRPS, which is the CPRS of Nevada. Angela is a professional speaker, a leader, a mentor, and also a mother of 5. And the coolest part of her is she is my own sister. So everybody should be very impressed about that. We want to welcome Angela today to be our keynote and to kick us off on day 2. Welcome, Angela.
That was such a nice introduction. And I love seeing all of your bright faces, especially my brother's. He likes to take a job. I'm going to finish my master's degree. Don't you worry about it. 10 years in the making. It's been a couple things that have gotten in the way. But I hear today you guys have your fancy mugs. So I don't know if mine is backwards, but I have mine, that my current mood is nope. And so I think it's going to be really fitting. First, my expectation of today was that I was going to be coming to you with better connectivity in my office. And unfortunately, about a week and a half ago, my daughter's preschool teacher came up positive for COVID. And so she is quarantining for 2 weeks. And on top of that, we are in a stay-at-home order part 2 in Nevada. I hear that California is soon on the way. So there's been some challenges, and I thought that my mug was kind of fitting, that when these challenges present themselves, kind of our initial response is like, nope, not one more thing, like cannot do it. Sitting at home today thinking about giving you a keynote while I'm trying to keep my children quiet on their school in the background and hoping that my 4-year-old doesn't recognize that I'm on a call and ask me to make her a snack is difficult for all of us. And it's such a testament to how many of you are on this call today. I heard yesterday that you guys were a little over 300 for your participation. I think what an amazing reflection of your leadership and your innovation, of your board and your districts and your regions, but most importantly of you as Parks and Rec professionals. And so today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about intention and purpose. For those of you who love to connect and talk, being given a 10-minute time frame is really difficult. But what it also causes us to do is to be thoughtful about the words that we choose to share. And I often have to do that as a leader of such a large team of staff members. I don't always get to see them every day. And so when I do see them, I want to be intentional with the words that I share with them. And so today is about celebrating that. And it seems strange to celebrate in a pandemic, right? Because we're so focused on everything that we've lost and everything that we don't have and what's coming next and the fear associated with that. And so the thought of celebrating what we have been given feels strange to us. But my first kind of request of this group is maybe to take a second right now and to think about something that you should be celebrating about either yourself or your team. And so I'm going to give you just a couple of seconds. If you have a little pen and paper, if you have your phone available, I'd like you to really think right now, what is something that you should be celebrating about yourself? And the second part I'm going to give you guys the encouragement is today to celebrate something. Celebrate your spouse. Celebrate what they're giving right now and to taking care of their children and to working while doing that. Celebrate your team members for showing up. Celebrate your boss for being a great leader and being a support to you. Take a moment today to tell those people how important they are to you. Because if the pandemic has given us anything, it's time, right? Time to reflect, time to stop, time to look at what we do as Parks and Rec professionals. And I have, over the years, had so much feedback and criticism of a generation that celebrates participation. right? A generation that gives trophies for participation. There's a lot of negative feedback towards that. But there's something that we've lost along the way about recognizing showing up. Somewhere in that journey, we began valuing winners over people willing to take the risk. Somewhere it became more valuable to us to hand a trophy to the children with the most points and not the child who is deeply shy, who took a risk to stand in a group of kids. The child whose parents might be getting a divorce and think that putting them in soccer is going to solve all of their problems, who doesn't know what tomorrow holds, but is putting themselves out there. Somewhere the value of the win went from the value of doing the difficult work. And today we need to celebrate the difficulties that you are all facing as Parks and Rec professionals, the challenges that we're up against. I started this activity, and I actually did it because I was with you guys last year. For anyone that was in District 2, we got to do a leadership day. It was amazing last year. I can't believe it's already been a year. And this activity I encourage people to do if you get a chance with your team. It's called A Day in My Shoes. We were struggling with our team. Particularly, there was an individual who was habitually showing up late. Give me a hand raise if you've had that before a pandemic, if you had those employees that just could not arrive on time. And so I said, we need to be able to address the why behind this. And the staff felt frustrated, particularly the management staff. And the most common response I hear to employees struggling is, if I can do it, they should be able to do it. Okay, let's take a second on that. If I can do it, they should be able to do it. So I challenged my management team to do an activity called A Day in My Shoes. Now this was a quick brainchild that I thought this is going to go over great. It only involves two things: a piece of paper and a question. How did you get here today? I brought all the team into the room to tell them that we were going to be learning about how we got there that day. And I thought, this is going to be great. We're all going to have such a feel-good learning experience. Instead of calling on people, I just went in order of the room, and I started with the first participant. And his answer was, I got here through the door. And the second participant stood up and said, I got here in a car. And the third participant, my mom. And I could feel the disheartened loss that this was not going to go the way that I had intended it to go. And the fourth participant up was, sure enough, our problem child who was habitually late. Only this time he gave a literal depiction of how he had arrived that day, starting with how he got his younger brother ready for school. His mom got up very early to go to work, and he had to wait for the bus to arrive to take his younger brother before he could leave. He went through the steps of the 3 bus transitions that he had to make. And all while he was talking, the room felt still and quiet. I kept thinking in my head, why? Why would an employee do this to make it here? And so later in the day, we asked, why do you work here? And his answer was, because I want to help people. Now that story isn't isolated to the teams I oversee. That story is rampant through all of your facilities. The difference is when we choose to ask the question, when we change the value from winning to the value of showing up, when we identify the difference between values, because it's so easy for us to say that a staff member showing up late means they don't value being on time, instead of the privilege of owning a car, the privilege of being located close to work. When we forget to identify how we all arrived here and the work that it takes for us to show up. See, people say to me all the time, should I thank my employees for getting to work? Doesn't the paycheck do that? No, it doesn't. Because we all took different steps. And while 330 of you being on this call is amazing, what's truly is amazing is that there are some of you who weren't going to make it today. There's some of you who had challenges, who thought, nope, not today, not time for training today, but you chose to be here anyways. And taking time to celebrate that as Parks and Rec professionals is so important. And so if you don't mind, I'd love to share with you guys my journey over the last couple of months. I'm going to make sure to keep an eye on the time because I can ramble on and on. On March 13th, my parents came to visit. My daughter was turning 9 years old. And as Danny said, my family is in California. That's where I'm born and raised. That's where my friends are. Making the choice to come here was a difficult one. And being away from your family in times like these is very difficult. And so they arrived in March. We were hearing rumblings that we may see a pandemic, and we thought, there's no way. There's no what? No way that they're going to close school. My first thought was to run to the grocery store and load up on as much beefaroni and macaroni and cheese to make sure that my kids could survive the next couple of weeks. We had prepared for months in advance. Part of my job and recreation at the time was to prepare our centers to be shelters in case of an emergency. And we had done trainings. We had gone over trainings that focused around terrorism attacks. We'd gone through trainings on large earthquakes or weather disasters, but we had never prepared ourselves for a pandemic. On Friday, I told my mom, I'm just going to go in for a few quick minutes to make sure that the team is set, and then I'll be right back. And so I called them to say, let's meet quickly and make sure that we're set, that our facilities are ready to open in the case that we're needed, to make sure we have flashlights and batteries and shelf stables and water and all the things that we would need, right? And at the end of making sure we were prepared, one person asked the following question: Angela, if everybody is going home, why in the hell is Parks and Recreation responding into the centers? Choosing my answer was one of the most important steps in that path. My answer was because we should. Because we should. On Sunday, I was called into our emergency operations center. The emergency operations centers for most cities activate, right, when times get really bad. And as I saw everyone piling in, our police chiefs and our fire chiefs and our city leaderships, I knew this was not going to be good. As we heard that New York had closed their schools and that Los Angeles had closed their schools, we knew the time was coming. And we knew that we were going to be on deck. And our boss looked at me and said, Angela, are you ready? And I was terrified to tell her, ready for... So I quietly stepped out into the hall and made the calls to my team and said, all right, we're being called. We need to start getting our shelters ready. We need to start responding. And I knew we were prepared for the task, but what we had never asked ourselves was who was going to respond in. We knew the people on the call list, right? We knew the names and the orders, but we didn't know if they would have the bravery to arrive that morning. Monday, March 16th at 4:30 a.m., we opened up 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week shelters so that our first responders could bring their children to us. So that single parents who needed to report in didn't have to make the choice between leaving their child at home or not responding to the pandemic. And as I braced myself walking in at 4, I wasn't sure who I was going to see, but there standing in front of me were not just vetted staff, they were 16-year-olds, folks who had been working for us for several months. And the message had to be clear to them in times of fear, much like now as we face the potential of another shutdown, as we worry about the future of our careers and our professions, as we struggle to figure out how are we going to do this without money and without resources and without people. My words had to be intentional like they need to be now. To tell my Parks and Rec team that we were there because we should be, that we had done this long before a pandemic. We were the ones to show up for the kids who had no one, to be their meals and their parents and their friends and their coaches and their mentors. That if we were scared, imagine the 8-year-old who kissed his mom goodbye as she went into the hospital, who worried for her. And we celebrated together the successes over the next 90 days running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as my team called 500 people for their birthdays, as they took them on virtual field trips to Disneyland and the water slides and projected fireworks on the ceilings so the kids could get an escape. As we made calls to all of our TR and inclusion participants to let them know that they were loved, and to spend time talking to their parents, to let them know that we would be okay, that we would see the return of hugging and in-person time, and that we were there for them. We made the difficult decisions and we showed up like you're showing up today. And I felt so honored to watch so many people make that commitment, because we don't need the money or the titles. Parks and Recreation has done this for years by giving ourselves in the way that's needed most. And so if today you need to hear how valuable you are, how needed you are, I hope you'll take a minute to celebrate that with each other, to celebrate that with you, to celebrate that with your teams, and to tell people. Because we all too often get hung up on the jokes and the negativity and the memes. And let me tell you, there are some funny ones. But sometimes that gets clouded and we forget to get just a little bit deeper on telling somebody what they mean to us, telling somebody how they're making a difference and how they're making change. At the time of the pandemic in March, I started as a recreation services manager. Now, I know that levels are different wherever they go. But for us, we have 3 levels that are above. I just saw that person sneak up on you, Jennifer, and it literally frightened me. I don't know if anyone can see Jennifer go, but and so at the same time in July, our assistant director decided to retire after nearly 30 years in the field. And the question came, are you going to go for this position? And I thought, well, no, it's 2 levels ahead of me. I don't think I'm prepared to do that. People said, well, you just led a pandemic. I think maybe you should put your name in the hat. And I went through 2 rounds of interviews, and on the last day, I stood across from our director with the final question of the day, and one that I'd like to close with all of you. She said, Angela, you've survived 2 days of interview process, 6-page writing assignments, personality assessments, oral boards. My final question for you is, why should you be selected for this position? And my answer was simple. The day before, I was driving in the car with my daughter, and she asked me the question, Mom, do you know how much a cloud weighs? And being the science connoisseur that I am, I answered, well, honey, a cloud doesn't weigh anything. Isn't it? I don't really know what clouds are made of, but I would assume that they don't probably weigh anything. And she said, wrong, Mom. A cloud weighs 1,000,000 pounds. I couldn't tell her then, but I thought she must have gotten that confused. So I went home and did my own research. I asked Alexa, how much does a cloud weigh? Hopefully my Alexa doesn't answer right now. And sure enough, Alexa told me that a cloud weighs 1,000,000 pounds. And so I said to my director, you wouldn't think a cloud could weigh that much. I bet when people look at the director of Parks and Recreation, they think, how tough could your job be? Because they don't know that when you go home at night, you have to protect 1,100 people's jobs. Because you have to make really tough decisions on making sure that your community is taken care of and your people are taken care of. And you have to be brave and courageous and strong. And you have to do it with a smile. And you have to let everyone know that it's going to be okay, because that's what leaders do. And the reason I want the job is because I want to be that support to you, to let you know that you don't have to hold that on your own, that I'll help you and I'll encourage you. And when you doubt yourself and you think you can't tell anybody, you can call me. I wanted her to know how much I appreciated what she did for us, the risks that she took in showing up every day. And I wanted to be at her side. And I knew it would be difficult with 5 children. And I wasn't sure at sometimes how I would do both. But when I got the job, my team said the same to me, that they would hold me up and they would help me. And my husband told me that he was so proud and that he would help us raise our children and he would help me with this school. So my question is to all of you, why do you want to be in Parks and Recreation? And who will you call to your side? Because we can survive the next couple of months and the next couple of years, and it may look different at the end, but the result will be the same. We're going to change the world. You just have to believe that you can. Thank you guys so much for your time today. Thank you for having me out and for your love and all your encouragement and your positivity. I appreciate it.
I have good news for everybody. You thought today was Wacky Mug Day, but it was actually Start Your Morning Off Crying Day. So if you cried during this morning's session, you get extra CEUs. Just write that into your survey that you cried. Just kidding. Thank you, Angela. Now you know what our family conversations are like. But that was fantastic. And now you know why she is the Leslie Knope of Nevada. Thank you guys all for attending. We do have about 5 minutes left. If there are any questions for our speaker, please feel free to put those into the comment section. If not, just again, another reminder that Angela has a podcast in the content section. If anybody was late this morning and missed the morning announcements, there are 5 podcasts, including Angela and Dr. B, Brandon from yesterday morning, and a few others. So please check that out. But again, the comments are coming in. Thank you again so much, Angela, for speaking this morning. And everybody just remember how important you are. This conference, I know that I've been to, I don't even know how many conferences in my career, and a lot of them, there's a lot of cool networking, and at very least you're getting a cool trip to San Diego or some cool town, but this is a special conference. We all have many, many reasons to skip out on this or not attend. And as Tamara and Ant and I were planning this, we had no idea if anybody would even have conference budgets or be able to attend or really even want to attend, with all the reasons to have excuses not to come to something like this. And again, we're over 300 strong. I mean, we have 100 people just here this morning for the keynote. So again, kudos to everybody, and just remember your importance every single day you're doing this. So without further ado, go ahead and head to your rooms. We have some sessions this morning, some really great speakers lined up, and have a great day. Remember, there's no social today. The next social is tomorrow. So look forward to that, and we'll see you guys a little later on this morning.